My name is Dean Gelling, and today I'd like to talk to you about an issue that I find equally applicable to anyone in this auditorium, and that concept is citizen diplomacy. And so, how many people in this room have traveled internationally in the past year? So a reasonable amount. There's a common misconception among the American people that our foreign policy and our international relations are only handled by those on Capitol Hill and by those in the White House. And this simply just isn't true, and today I'll be explaining to you why. Citizen diplomacy is the idea, the concept, that each and every one of us has the responsibility to promote a good outlook on the American people abroad. And this can be done in many different ways. Because we have 67 million Americans travel abroad every year. 67 million people make contact with foreign peoples, with foreign countries, and with foreign cultures. And if we engage in proper conduct with those people and those cultures, we could promote a better image of ourselves abroad. Not only that, but the U.S. Department of State brings millions of people to the U.S. through different programs and through other efforts with diplomacy to help promote otherwise engage them with American culture. And by engaging with those people, they would be able to go back to their own countries with a different outlook of how Americans interact. This past summer, I was offered an amazing opportunity from the United States Department of State to go abroad to South Korea. While I was in South Korea, I engaged with the locals, I engaged with their culture, and I engaged with their country in general. And I learned a great amount about the country and about its people. And so if each of those 67 million Americans could travel abroad and learn a thing or two about the people and their culture, the idea of citizen diplomacy is that that would trickle down into our foreign policy and into our foreign relations, and as a democratic system, form the way that we interact with other nations in general. While I was in Korea, there was this amazing opportunity to live with a host family. I went to school every day, and I made a lot of great friends. And through interacting with them, their outlook on how Americans interact and my outlook on how Koreans interact was greatly changed. And so if each and every one of us was able to go abroad, as everyone in this room who raised their hand, if we were all able to go abroad and live like this, it would create this huge effect, this huge ripple effect, and that's the idea of this. It's change on a small scale that trickles down into our entire foreign policy system as a whole. So while I was in Korea, I was there for 7 weeks, so I had lots of different interactions that might fall under this umbrella topic of citizen diplomacy, but there was one in particular that was really profound for me. And that was one night where I was taking the bus home from a dinner out with my friends, and the bus was packed. People were coming home from work, people were coming home from other different things, and so it was really packed, and I was sitting on one of the last seats in the bus when an older woman walked onto the bus. The first thing to do under proper Korean etiquette would be to offer your seat up to this woman, so that's exactly what I did. I stood up, and before I could get a word in Korean, she started stumbling over herself in English, trying to tell me that she didn't need the seat because she was getting off at the next stop. And so it took us about a minute and a half to reach, this mutual understanding of what was going on, but at that point I figured there was no point in sitting back down. And I stood there with this woman, and we had this great exchange in Korean about what I was doing there and how I was learning the language. And 2 minutes later, that woman walked off of the bus, and I never saw her again. But I think I was able to have a profound effect on the way that she thought. It's not uncommon within Korean society for older people, for the elderly, to hold misconceptions and hold stereotypes and preconceptions about the American people due to atrocities that were committed during the Korean War. And so I hoped that by interacting with this woman, by showing her that I have respect for her culture, that I was able to change the way that she thought about Americans and about our country as a whole. And so we have all of these Americans going abroad every year, and the problem with it is that we don't engage with the people in general. We don't make these person-to-person connections that connect our nations globally. And so if we can make ties between people, we can make ties between nations, and that's the goal. You don't have to travel abroad to get involved with citizen diplomacy. It's a cause that starts on the smallest of scales. And so by interacting with people who come here, by interacting with people who come abroad, by reading up and being informed about the world around us, we can increase our retention of global education, we can increase our respect for different cultures, and we can maybe better understand how the world works and how our foreign relations and foreign policy work. The aim of this talk is to help start a grassroots movement. The aim of this talk is to spread this message because a lot of people haven't heard of this initiative. And so my hope is that everyone in this room can walk out with a different understanding of this concept. One where we see international borders less as walls and more as bridges. One where we understand the power that each and every one of us holds, and one where we go out into our communities and change things for the better. Thank you.